Hey everyone and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial I will show you how to sew the angel pattern. Angel features a square neckline, romantic pin tucks and a waist tie to gently cinch the silhouette. The pattern can be made as a top, mini or midi dress. You can find the pattern and the list of materials in the description below, so let's get started. After cutting out the pattern pieces, prepare the front and back pieces, including the lining, for sewing. Secure the curves of the neckline, armholes and shoulder seams with a 0.5 cm stay stitch to prevent it from stretching. A stay stitch is a line of straight stitching sewn onto the fabric just inside the seam line. It won't be visible on the finished garment. Transfer the pleating marks and the waist tie gaps from the pattern pieces to the right side of the front and back pieces using an erasable pen or tailor's chalk. Make sure to transfer as accurate as possible. I like to punch small holes through the circles on the pattern pieces with a sharp object, such as small thread scissors, and then place the pieces on the fabric and transfer the holes, after which you can connect them with a ruler. Take the front pieces and pin the pleats together with the wrong sides facing each other, so you are pinning on the right side of the fabric. The lines with the arrows in between them on the pattern are being pinned together. Now sew each pleat together. Once done, press the pleats towards the side seam. For the front pieces and the front lining, pin and sew the darts towards the wrong side of the fabric. Follow the dart lines as indicated on the pattern. At the end, towards the bust point, sew a few stitches in a straight line close to the side and do not backstitch. Tie the thread ends with a few knots. This will help creating a crisp dart. Once done, press the dart facing down. Make sure to repeat the steps for the front lining as well, and also press this down at the end. We will now finish a couple of raw edges with an overlocker or zigzag stitch. For the front and back pieces, finish the side seams. And for the front and back lining, finish the side seams and the bottom hem. For each lining piece, fold the overlocked hem at the bottom to the wrong side and finish with a 0.5 cm hem. Press once done. Now take the front band pattern pieces and interfacing. Place the side of the fusible interfacing with the glue to the wrong side of the front band. Place the interfacing centered across the band and align the top to the notch on the front band. Iron on to secure it. Fold and press the 1 cm seam allowance of the long sides towards the middle of the band. Next, fold and press the front band in half lengthwise, so the wrong sides will be facing. Unfold one seam of the long edge of one of the front bands and pin to the center of one of the front pieces with the right sides facing. Align at the top and match the notches. Repeat this step for the second front piece and band. Sew together using a 1 cm seam allowance and press the seam towards the front band. Trim the seam allowance just sewn in half to remove the excess seam. Also trim the other still unsewn front band seam in half. The waist tie will go through gaps around the waist, which are made out of sets of small buttonholes. For the front and back pieces, Follow the markings at the waist on the pattern and sew the sets of buttonholes following the steps of your sewing machine. You can find the tutorial for buttonholes on the Singer Tradition linked below. Give it a press once done and then carefully cut the holes open. If you're working with a thin fabric, you can place some tissue paper underneath the fabric or use a wash-away interfacing to stabilize and sew neat buttonholes. We will now assemble the lining to the main fabric. First, fold the front bands inside out so the interfacing is outside and the right sides are facing. Pin this together at the top. Now place one of the front linings on top of one of the front pieces, with the right sides facing, and pin this together. Sew the neckline, including the strap side of the neckline, together with a 6 mm seam allowance. Please note that the lining will overlap with the front band by 0.5 cm. Make sure to sew over the folded front bands as well. Place some small snips in the seams of the curves to ease, but make sure not to cut too close to the seam. Now understitch the lining to the seams. Press the seam together to finish. Fold the front band to close so it now closes around the front seam of the front piece. Trim some bulk on top if needed, but make sure to not get too close. Pin the back seam of the front band to the back side of the front piece and sandwich the lining in between. Double check everything is caught together. For accuracy, you can consider hand basting this together before sewing with the machine as a next step. Sew this together by top stitching the front bands 2 to 3 mm from the side. Give a final press once done. Take the back piece and back lining. Place the lining on top of the back piece with the right sides facing. Pin the neckline, including the strap side of the neckline, together. Sew using a 6 mm seam allowance. Understitch the lining to the seam. Place some small snips in the seam allowance of the curves to ease, but make sure not to cut too close to the seam. Press the seam together to finish. Fold the front and back pieces open. Place the front pieces on top of the back pieces with the right sides facing, so the right sides of the lining are facing each other and the right sides of the main fabric are facing. Pin the top of the shoulder straps together with the right sides facing. Make sure to match the middle seam. Sew together using a 6 mm seam allowance and press the seam open once done. Place the pieces so the right sides are facing out. For one side of the armhole sides, take the armhole edges of the lining and main fabric and fold these around the opposite sides and put them together with the right sides facing. Pull the strap through. Pin together from the armhole edge to the shoulder seam, matching the notches. You will sew the part from the armhole edge up to the shoulder seam, sew using a 6 mm seam allowance. We are working one armhole seam at a time. Place some small snips in the seam allowance of the curves to ease, but make sure not to cut too close to the seam. Once done, pull the strap back out of the sandwich. Understitch the lining of the seam for as far as you can sew towards the shoulder seam. You won't be able to understitch all, but that is no problem. Repeat these steps for the remaining 3 armhole to shoulder seams and press all the seams once done. Pin the side seams of the lining together and the main fabric side seams together with the right sides facing. Make sure to align the seam in the middle of the armhole corner. Sew together using a 1 cm seam allowance and press the seams open. Finish the bottom hem of the main fabric with a 0.5 cm rolled hem. First, sew a 0.5 cm hem. Then fold this once more to the wrong side, sewing another 0.5 cm. Press the hem once done. Create buttonholes on the right front band. This is the right side when you are wearing the top or dress. Follow the markings on the pattern for the buttonhole placement. Next, sew the buttons to the left front band following the markings on the pattern. We will now prepare to sew the waist tie. Fold the strip lengthwise in half so the wrong sides are facing and press to create a crease. Fold open again. Next, fold in both sides to meet the crease line and iron. You might prefer to iron one side first and then the other side. Finally, fold the two sides together and iron. Sew the waist tie together with a 2 mm distance from the edge. Make sure to also close the straps at the end by folding in the raw edges. Now use a safety pin or similar to place the waist tie through the buttonholes at the middle. Weave the tie through in such a way that most of the tie will be visible on the outside of the garment. The angel top or dress is now finished. Double check for any loose threads to cut off, remove any visible basting stitches and remove any erasable pen or chalk marks. I hope the tutorial was helpful. Drop a comment below or send an email if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.